The Fringe Podcast, Summer Rewatch, Episode 12.
This is Jessica Nicole, and you are listening to The Fringe Podcast.
Web hosting for The Fringe Podcast is provided by HostGator. Easy WordPress installation, unlimited domains, unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and a 99.9% uptime guarantee. On sale now for $6.36 a month. Visit thefringepodcast.com/hosting and start serving up your website from the best hosting company in any universe. Welcome back to the Fringe Podcast Summer Rewatch series as we continue our journey through all things wonderful called Fringe, and we are still in Season 3 this week. We'll get really close to the end this week. We'll finish up Season 3 next week, and it's hard to believe. We're down to 5 weeks, and not including this week. 6 weeks, I guess, including this one, until we wrap up this rewatch that we've been doing with Fringe, and it has been so much fun. And tonight we are covering Reciprocity, Concentrate and Ask Again, Immortality, 6B, Subject 13, and OS. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Tonight, I am joined by Lou, Hank, and we've got a newcomer tonight. It's John. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great.
Are you nervous at all?
You betcha.
You should be. You should be very, very nervous. Not really, no. You're just among friends tonight, hanging out with some Fringe fans, and we were chatting before this all started, and I said, it's just a conversation. So, and really that's all that it is. But I can understand nerves. I actually get nervous when I get on other people's podcasts, and but there's no need to be. But I understand your nerves if you're nervous for sure. But, hopefully those will wear off soon, and we'll just start chatting about Fringe, and it'll be a whole lot of fun. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? How long have you been watching Fringe, and how long have you been a member of the Fringe podcast community?
Okay. I hail from College Station, Texas, and I work for the university down here, and been watching Fringe since first season, first episode. Found the podcast about 2 years ago, and I've been a frequent visitor to the chat room.
Okay. Well, that's great, except for the Texas A&M part, but we'll forgive you for that. Now, Hank, you're a Texan, too.
We all got our crosses to bear.
That's true. So you and Hank are not too far from each other. Hank's down there in Houston, and Lou, I don't remember where you're at. Are you there, Lou?
At Alberta.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Great White North.
Yep, the Canadian. So it's great having all you guys with us tonight. I was telling the guys before we started, last week we had an all-ladies panel, and tonight we have all guys. So, we had some, I'll tell this might be too much information. Sorry, Hank. We had some issues with Hank's microphone before we started where it was rubbing up against his beard, and I said, the ladies don't have this problem with the microphone rubbing up against their beard. And I'm grateful for that. So, but anyway, let's get into some fun here tonight. Let's talk about these episodes, and we're going to get it kicked off with Reciprocity. But before I do that, let's play that music.
Root beer float.
Butterscotch pudding.
Mr. Papaya. Fruit cocktail. Coffee yogurt.
All right, so we're going to get things kicked off tonight and starting our conversation, like I said, with Reciprocity. This is the episode where Peter goes shapeshifter hunting. Here's our episode synopsis from our friends over at fringepedia.net. It says the team joins Massive Dynamic to analyze the reconstructed components that were dispersed around the planet and are surprised when it shows life. Walter discovers a terrible secret about Peter's role in making the device operational. The discovery of dead shapeshifters add to the concern. This was written by Josh Singer and directed by Jana Schwark. I think I pronounced that pretty close. I always like to have Clint pronounce that because he's better at that than I am, but he's not here. So we're going to let Lou kick things off tonight. Lou, what do you got for us?
All right, Reciprocity. And just for this whole group of episodes in general, I just want to emphasize the point that because Fringe is such a far-out show, I really enjoyed when I rewatched these episodes how right they did the relationships, not just between Peter and Olivia, but between all the characters. But I really especially appreciated how they handled Peter and Olivia's relationship. They asked the questions that I would have been asking of somebody that was involved with, and the reasons why Peter and Olivia were like unable to connect properly always made sense to me, and that none of that felt fake or soap opera-ish.
Yeah.
So for this particular episode, I love the opening of this episode. It's got that great old 50s science fiction B movie kind of feel, driving up to the army base, and they're all Walter's ears are giving him trouble, so he needs some great gum in that. And then of course the shot with the machine, just the noises it makes when Peter activates it, like you're really on the edge of your seat. So by the time you get to the opening credits, you're right into it, and it's just a fantastic setup. And I think a lot of people feel that season 3 kind of slowed down a little bit after Olivia got back to her own side, but on rewatch, I really enjoyed these episodes, so I really didn't have that problem at all.
Okay.
And we have this whole concept of Peter being weaponized by the machine, which I found very interesting.
Yeah.
And the parallel there, which stuck out for me a lot more this time, was with Walternate, with Walter taking the DNA, which was kind of hokey. I mean, drinking or snorting DNA, I don't really see how that can activate your brain cells, but you got to go with that. But it's just interesting that he, as the effects wore off, his body started to reject it. And I think even though they overplayed it a little bit at the end of the episode, I think a lot of people were saying, well, why was Peter like that in this one episode, and then the next episode he was kind of back to normal? And I just think that his body sort of got used to being connected to the machine and rejected the changes that it was making to his personality. And it was, but it was jarring to see him hunting down these shapeshifters and killing them. So he was pretty ruthless in this episode. Plus, he was lying to Walter and Olivia, and that's not something that he has done normally. So that was interesting to see. And I was trying to come up with a theme for Olivia in these episodes. And in this episode, her hairstyle. And unfortunately, this doesn't play out in the rest of the episodes because she goes back to tighter hair. But in this one, her hair is looser, and it's actually kind of braided. Okay. So I kind of took that as a visual cue for quantum entanglement, in that she was, the braids were like interweaving and that. But unfortunately, in the subsequent episodes, she just wears the straight hair really tight, and it kind of blows my theory out of the water. But I still like it. So I'm throwing that out there. What else do we have? It was interesting that there's all these books for the First People in different languages, but none of them mention the machine. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I really thought was kind of interesting was that Walter says that Belly was like he wants to regrow his brain or get his brain back to where it was. And he says that Belly was too clever for that, and he inhibited his brain's ability to regenerate cells. And I think that this may be the reason why in episode 419, Letters of Transit, he has suffered some sort of brain damage when he's revived, because his brain is unable to regenerate the cells. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I thought that was kind of cool.
I like that. I think it's a good catch.
And that's it.
Okay, excellent. All right, Hank, what about you?
Well, I always like to throw out the food observations because I am a food blogger by hobby. The grape gum, the peanut butter sandwich that Peter was sharing with Walter, the banana split after he ingested the sample created from chimpanzee DNA. One of the things that I remember standing out to me about several of these episodes is about the fact that Peter used to be a con man, as we kind of saw back in the season 1, especially when they first were introduced to Peter Bishop.
Uh-huh.
There was an episode of CSI back around one of the early seasons that dealt with the fact that if a child has been abducted from their family and kind of forced to live in another family on some level, they learn to adapt to their environment, and some of it involves being able to lie, among other things, to be able to blend in, if you will, just because of the situation. And Peter was showing some very classic symptoms of this, because this is not the first time there's been a case of a kid that was abducted by some other family and was like basically kept as their kid and lied to the rest of the public about it, and then the truth came out years and years later, and typically in most cases they kind of either turn a criminal or con or something like that. So I kind of noticed a little bit about that there.
I like that.
Also, I noticed how everybody was trying to shield Olivia from Faux Olivia's diaries, especially with her thoughts about Peter. Another thing that I also noticed was basically Walter was filling with the whipped cream, and that moment Nina called him, and they had a little double entendre there. I was like, ooh, please, no. Let's see here. Oh, there was actually a Lost reference in there. Dr. Falcon, do you remember Expose? Billy D. Williams, Lost?
Uh-huh.
The secret agent that the three stripper undercover agents were trying to track was somebody called the Falcon, and turns out that Dr. Falcon was one of the moles, one of the shape-shifting moles. Found that kind of a little bit of a hilarious Lost tie-in there.
Okay. I just kept thinking of if they ever show like Die Hard on regular TV, it's not, yippee-ki-yay, mother, whatever. It's yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon. That's all I can think of now when I see a guy named Falcon.
Yeah. I also noticed there was a bit of a reference to Locard's principle. Again, another CI reference there, that when two objects touch each other, they interact, and each one is left fundamentally changed. Walter went through kind of that whole deal talking about Peter with a machine, about how it's weaponized him and everything, and I kind of found it interesting with regards to that little observation. All the copies of the first people's books, and we find there's one more in the next episode, for example. Yep. I just kind of really just find it very interesting, though, when I look back at this. Walter was being super protective of Peter. Everybody was trying to protect Olivia from the truth there. And then kind of towards the end, we start to see, Olivia is starting to come, I wouldn't say unravel, but she's starting to seriously be affected by what had happened before, after she began reading it and seeing how similar Olivia's thoughts were to hers, but some of the differences as well, because she grew up with her mother, for example. Yeah. Very good. All right, anything else? That's what I've got. Okay, cool. Very, very good. Thank you, Hank. What about you, John?
Well, the title of all these episodes seem like they kind of allude to an alternate title. And reciprocity sounds like reciprocate,
right?
Which I kind of translate that into payback time, as in payback from Peter to the shapeshifters for getting away with everything they got away with. And in Olivia's case, she finally gets to read Olivia's diary, so it's payback for her too. Huh. It's time for them to look at the other side and get to do what they want to do. So
I like that.
That's pretty much all I've got on this episode.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I had only ever looked at it as far as that the way the machine and was interacting with Peter, but I like both of those insights that you gave there. I think it fits in nicely. I don't have a whole lot either. I've got a couple of small notes on this. This was another instance where we got Broyles called Colonel Broyles, and that just goes back to me and Clint totally missing that later in season 4. So this is the second time where he's been called Colonel Broyles. And we mentioned this back in the day, but it's worth mentioning again, that they called her Faux Olivia. We've always called her Faux Olivia in this community because we had a contest, and gosh, who was it that won that contest?
Probably Zero Fights.
No, it was. It's right on the tip of my brain.
I was rooting for Olivia.
And anyway, Faux Olivia.
The bow-leg reference was great.
Yeah, so it was good to have that mentioned in this episode, and then this is the debut of the machine. Now we had seen the machine in the other universe, but we'd never. It was just there, right? I mean, we saw a piece of it come alive when Peter put his hand in there. But this is really the first episode where we get to see the machine come alive, and it was kind of nice to see that again and see their reactions, because now we know, what's going to become of the machine, where the machine came from, and how it's going to be used, and what the result of that is. But at this point, we didn't, and it was really cool to see it fire up, and just all of them kind of stand back in awe of this machine, and it was just really cool to see that again.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah. So, all right. Any other thoughts on Reciprocity?
Just two quick ones. Peter gets a bleeding nose, which if anybody watched Lost is never a good sign. So we just have to point that out. And I see Alternate Cats made an observation that Olivia was weaponized too as a kid. And I think it's interesting that if Peter and Olivia didn't have each other, they probably actually would have ended up being weapons. But between the two of them, because of their relationship, that fate did not befall either of them.
It's possible. Yeah.
There was also a bunch of people with insomnia in this episode, too.
Yeah. That's never good either.
No.
All right. Well, the glyphs in this episode spelled alter, and the clue for the next episode, when Peter is out there and he kills, we have the one shapeshifter who is a woman that transforms into a man. Yeah, there you go. Bermudez. There is a sticker on a box there in the alley that says blue powder. And, of course, blue powder plays heavily into the next episode. Concentrate and ask again. The synopsis is the investigation follows three men intent on revenge that are using a powderized bioweapon to assassinate those they blame for their losses. A hypersensitive test subject from Walter's past agrees to assist with the difficult case and finds a new friend in Olivia. This was written by Matthew Pitts and Graham Rowland and directed by Dennis Smith. All right, Hank, you're up.
Okay. Well, of course, when you first see that title, you think David Robert Jones, but there isn't really a David Robert Jones in there at all.
Right.
I noticed, among other things, like the fake old pictures of William Bell and Nina, and somebody had been doing some photoshopping with Blair Brown and Leonard Nimoy, among other people. Found that very amusing.
Yeah, me too.
Also noticed, kind of like we start to see the beginnings of the misgivings about Peter and Olivia, and this is where she makes the remarks, among other things, about she wears a dress every once in a while. Ironically, she ends up wearing a dress towards the end of the episode, as we all remember.
Yes.
Looked pretty good, darn good at it, too, I might also add.
Sure.
Again, we also see Walter doing a few things, kind of oddball, driving to New Hampshire in the middle of nowhere, finding another Cortexiphan kid who was somehow or another rejected. But apparently the reason why he was taken out of the program was not quite so nefarious as Peter initially thought. Yeah, you took him out because your secret would be out. No, actually, his telepathy was just so horrible he couldn't be in crowds of people. He had to isolate himself away from everything. Also, just Walter being himself, farting in the hazard suit. And then later on urinating over at the guy's house. It's like, okay, Walter, what are we going to do with you? The punch buggy reference, I always remember that as slug bug when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Myself.
That's what we always called him too, yeah.
Yeah. Let me see here. Found it very interesting about how the Cortexiphan kids were immune to each other's powers, because I wasn't exactly sure if that was ever mentioned before or since then, but that was an episode where they kind of make that very statement that sometimes they were immune to each other's powers. Also, the green-eyed monster, Olivia's jealousy of her other self growing as the episode goes on, and Simon writing down what he read from Peter and just her reaction to it. We really start to see that particular element of the soap opera, shall we say, really start to come to a head on several levels, especially with the coffee. Black, 1 sugar. No, he gets it with milk and double sugar, and it's just like, just the way it affects her, the way she nails Peter for it later on is just, it's frustrating for the folks that are big fans of the Peter-Olivia relationship to see that. But that was something that really kind of stood out for me, this whole thing. Those are my main observations there. Actually, one more thing I almost forgot. A bit of a pot shot taken, I think, at Blackwater, though they don't call it that, defense contractors. And I also felt there was a little bit of a reference to Unbreakable, the way the bones were kind of falling apart,
Okay. I have seen that movie, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Mr. Glass.
I liked it.
Yes, it's a great movie.
Yeah. All right. Lou? No, I'm sorry. John is next. Go ahead, John.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of thought this episode should be called Simon Says or something like that, because it was another lesson for superheroes, which are favorite crew. Those are the superheroes. If you think about it, he's constantly telling Olivia, be careful what you ask for. Think about it before you ask again. And then at the very end, the last scene, he really does give it to her. He gives her the envelope and says, here, this is what it's like to be me. So that's pretty much all I got from this episode. Other than the fact, though, that this plot is very similar to an episode out of an old TV series called The Burning Zone.
Okay.
And,
yes.
Yeah. They had like some dalliances with injecting people with shark cartilage, I believe, and for some reason it caused their skeletons to degenerate.
Huh.
Oh,
Yes, that's right. I remember that episode, actually.
Okay.
I've never even heard of that show.
I haven't either. It
That
sounds
was
like a
pretty
show
cool.
I would like.
Yeah, there was
John
that
Glover.
guy from... I'm sorry?
John Glover, who played Lionel Luthor for Smallville, was in that show, in fact.
Oh, he was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, John?
Well, I was going to say, the guy who played Odo, I can't remember his name, Rene, I can't say his last name.
Yeah.
Auberjois.
Very good.
Wow.
He
Nice,
also played
guys.
a
That
part
was
in the
great.
series.
Yeah.
Great memories, guys.
Yeah. That's a character I hadn't thought of in probably 10 years. You guys just rattled that off just like that. That's impressive, man. You're like nerd cred just went through the roof. All right. Anything else, John?
That's about it for me.
Okay. All right. Lou, how about you?
It was interesting to see Olivia in this episode. Really, as John has mentioned, she's talking to Nina about the journal, and then it sort of wanders off into Peter likes Olivia because she's better, and then it's Olivia is very, for somebody who is so on the money and really good at her job, she really has low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to watch that dynamic play out in this episode. And I like it that Nina tells her that, she and Belle sort of had something similar going on, and she always regretted that they never clarified their relationship, and she's urging her not to make the same mistake with Peter. Like, ask him how he feels. Just don't make the assumption on your side that she's doing that. And again, she's got the severe tight hairstyle, so she's really retracted back from the previous episode. I love Walter's line, "Why would anyone want to kill a scientist? What did we ever do?" That was great.
Really?
Really, yeah. The Tricky Dick reference that his wife came on to him.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was funny. And again, like the relationship, like Peter's telling Olivia, yes, I do think of her all the time because it was, it was what I'd always dreamed it would be like when I was with you. And I like his explanation that he didn't know, or he noticed the differences, but he was not cluing into that it was not her because he thought he was the source of those differences, which is, I mean, yeah, it might be a little egocentric, but I think anybody in a relationship is going to say, well, this person's acting this way because of me. So that's cool because that means they're really into me and that, they're trying to be better or different. So I thought that was really well done. I love Walter when he was lost and he's on the phone. He says, "Bring money, I'm starving."
And he gets a Slurpee.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But in general, I'm okay with this episode. But I really had a problem when they pulled out another Cortexiphan kid to. They kind of become like the red shirts for me a little bit because this poor guy and the actor that played the psychic in this episode, Simon, he was fantastic. Like he really looked like you could really feel his pain every time he was mind reading in that. So, but I just think that the show, and I understand that you need some sort of plot device for the theme that they're telling, but I just don't like that they go to the Cortexiphan kids for these kinds of things all the time. So I'm glad that this never really became something that was repeated going down the road. And it was funny that the guys asked Olivia if are you a good shot? I know that you talked about this in the previous podcast.
I thought about the
she
same
was
thing.
She was really good.
Yeah. Well, she got the guy right through the throat even in this episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, Olivia is always wanting to fix everybody else's problems. She's trying to tell Simon, you don't have to be like this. You don't have to let your ability rule your life. When right now, she's letting the very same thing happen to her. So, she's got like this blind spot towards herself. And Peter tells her that she's not like Simon, and she's not broken like him. So I really like how Peter was in this episode. And we find out that Sam Weiss knows about the machine, and the First People, and Peter Bishop, and the creation and destruction scenarios. Right. And I'm going to save that because I'm really not happy with how his arc played out over the at the end of the season. That was a big setup, and then just kind of like didn't go anywhere. So that's probably my biggest beef with the third season is what happened with Sam Weiss. And it was interesting that Peter's frequency is influenced by the Olivias, right. And the note that Simon gave him at the end, he still has feelings for her, was like so. What would you say, vague or nebulous? Like, I mean, of course, but he didn't say if they were good feelings or bad feelings. Right. I mean, everybody has feelings for people if they know them, and so it was kind of like a non-statement. But of course,
may I interject something?
Sure.
There's a very thin line between love and hate. The opposite of love isn't hatred. The opposite of love is I don't give a damn one way or the other.
Yeah.
Apathy.
The fact that he has any feelings for her would be disturbing.
Yeah, but it's just especially for Olivia, because she's so down on herself in this episode. So she's going to take that note and paint the worst scenario for that. So
it's very neutral.
Yeah.
It served Sam's purposes, but it didn't exactly try to hurt Olivia.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like it's a good Rorschach test, because if how you interpret it says a lot about what you think about yourself, right? So. It was a good episode, except for the going back to the Cortexiphan kid thing again, which I don't. I'm glad they haven't done.
Yeah, I think Lou and I share a lot of the same sentiment here on this episode. I mean, with the whole Simon thing, it was kind of nice to see a different Cortexiphan kid, but I felt like they could have done a number of other things to get to the end of this. Crime, if you will, and especially at the end, I don't think they, if they hadn't had him, they could have come up with some other way to identify these guys that had this device on them, strapped to them or whatever. So it was just a plot device for me, and it worked, but it wasn't a real strong use of it. I don't think it wasn't the best they could have done, but it was okay. But it wasn't great, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I love what Lou said about Olivia. She's always been her own worst enemy. She's always doubting herself. We'll see that on through season 4, and just cannot for whatever reason. Even though everyone always tells her, Belle has told her, Walter has told her, other people have told her that, that she's the strongest person that they've ever known. She was always the strongest, and she took to the Cortexiphan better than anybody else. She's unique. She's wonderful. Blah blah blah. She just can't see it in herself, and she's kind of her own worst enemy sometimes. And that note that's so vague at the end of the episode, we're going to see it play out over the next couple of episodes, and it's really going to torment her internally. Which I think that's what Simon was trying to do. I mean, if you could read people's minds, you would be tormented by that. And I think that's what he wanted to do. He was trying to get some relief by someone understanding his situation.
Yep.
Let's see. That's just my commentary on Lou. Sorry, I've got a couple of notes. Not just a couple, though.
Well, I am out to steal your notes every time I'm on. So.
That's right. That's right. Another mention of the Worcester trials or Worcester trials, which again I think we blanked on at some point in season 4, and we had talked a couple of episodes ago. I think it was in the Milo episode, The Plateau, where he was able to read minds and predict scenarios. But here's a situation where Cortexiphan has enabled this guy to read minds, and it wasn't quite like we saw with the observers, but as far as with him reciting things as they say them, but he very well could have, I think. But we have also had the discussion where maybe Cortexiphan is what gives the observers the ability to travel in and out of dimensions and possibly through time. And since this was so similar to that, not an exact replication like we saw with Milo, but similar, I thought I'd throw it out there that maybe that is also that what we see in the observers. If Cortexiphan is what enables them to jump through time and universes, that maybe it is one and the same Cortexiphan that allows them to also have the ability to read minds and foresee possible outcomes.
That's interesting. I always just took that the reason they it seemed like they could read minds just because they've seen the outcomes, but they're basically just repeating something that they've seen. Not that they were reading the person's mind, but that's an interesting idea that you put forward.
I don't know that I like it, but I thought it was just another theory worth throwing out there. I think I still like the other one better, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Any other thoughts on Concentrate and Ask Again?
You don't have to ask again.
All right. The glyphs in this one spelled hatch, and the clue was the Volkswagen Beetle, because the very next episode is Immortality, and it's the Bug Girl episode.
Oh, yeah, and the Bug Girl shows up looking like Lisa Loeb with red hair.
That's right.
She should come back.
Yeah.
Yes, she should.
Well, if you like chick singers with glasses, you have Ingrid Michaelson, that's pretty popular right now. Let's see here. The synopsis reads, the absence of Colonel Broyles from Fringe Division is felt when an obsessed scientist infects citizens in an attempt to develop a key vaccine. Olivia reunites with Frank. Secretary Bishop questions his willingness to cross certain ethical boundaries. This was written by Ethan Gross and David Wilcox and directed by Brad Anderson.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second.
No problem. John, you're up, actually.
Oh, great. And we're talking about Immortality, right?
Immortality, that's right.
Oh, golly. This episode should have been called All About Me, because it seemed like it was either all about Olivia or it was all about the guy who was trying to resurrect the dead Skeletor beetle.
Okay.
It's pretty gruesome. I loved more of the docking of the Zeppelins, and they're actually called Zeppelins. It was just a bug fest. It was gross. That was enough for me. That was a guy show.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. I mean, typically the things when things start crawling out of people's mouths, those are kind of the grosser ones, and this one had that, and burrowing out of their necks and stuff too. That was pretty gross.
And don't forget to spell my name right. Yeah, his last words.
Yeah.
Another scientist showing off for someone.
That's right.
Yeah. Why would we ever want to kill them?
But at least
Really? Can't help it. I just love the way Peter delivered that line when Walter said that.
It's classic.
Yeah, but at least this scientist, even though he was deranged, at least he was trying to cure a disease that plagued humanity. So
bird flu, yeah.
I'll give him that much.
Oh, geez.
The cure was worse than the disease, if you ask me. But
yeah. I mean, we don't know how rampant it was over there. Sounded like it was kind of a big deal.
Killed all the sheep.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, John?
No, that's all I got.
All right. Lou?
Okay. This was an interesting episode because we found out that that line that the Observer said to Peter a couple episodes ago about it must be difficult to be a father came to fruition.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys discussed it, that some people wondered if this was part of a plan or something like this, or a backup plan. I think this is totally destiny or fate or whatever. I don't think there was any plans for this to happen. I just think that destiny is for Peter and to Olivia, either one of them, one version of them, they're going to have a child together. So it happened to be for Olivia in this timeline. And it was interesting that they did a nice fake out in thinking that Olivia was infected with the bug. I thought that was really well set up and done. But the pieces before it with Lincoln Lee getting stuck in the freezer and people falling through the floors, I was going like, okay, that's a little hokey. But so it wasn't one of my favorite episodes because I really didn't identify with the scientist trying to. He had lost his way. Like he wasn't doing it for him for the greater good. He was just really doing it for himself. And he told that one guy in the bar, "Do you know this? Do you know these scientists?"
Oh, sure.
Crick,
yeah,
and Salk, and and so forth. So I really didn't. I wasn't really too much into that storyline at all. It was interesting that we find out that the machine part that Olivia had stolen on our side has finally made it to the other side. And that Walternate and Brandon, or Bad Brandon, are doing cortexiphan tests on kids or younger people, and they're finding as the younger they get, the more likely they are to develop some sort of powers. But the line that Walter will not cross in this episode is testing it out on children. So that was very interesting to find out. It's always interesting to find out what the barriers are for the characters, but Fringe does it so elegantly because this organically ties in, of course, to his whole story with Peter being taken from him.
Sure.
So I really like how they did that. And we found out that Boston was ambered in 2004, which I thought was interesting. Lincoln Lee is terrible at keeping secrets.
Yes, he is.
It was interesting that Walternate underestimated Peter's attachments to the other side. And I'll touch on this more in Subject 13, but the seeds for Walter being with his mistress were circled back into that episode.
Yep.
So that was really well played. And what else do we have here? I loved it when Frank asked Olivia if she was in love with the father, and she, of course, didn't really answer. And once Walternate finds out, he's at the apartment, Olivia's apartment, like a dirty shirt, just making sure that she knows that she's got nothing to worry about. And the way that episode leaves it, this is the lever that Walternate is probably going to use to try to get Peter to come back.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay, good stuff. All right, Hank?
Well, you fellas covered a good deal of it there. I already made my little comments about Bug Lady looking like Lisa Loeb with red hair. I felt some of it was a little bit of a reference to X-Files Season 3, Episode 12, War of the Coffer Phases, except those involve killer cockroaches like swarming on people and everything, but the same kind of a deal. Also like the little double entendre where Bug Lady told Charlie she could scratch his itch if he wanted. And, again, like a couple of things that really did stand out to me, though, is like we again got a little bit further on in the the full Olivia soap opera regarding the pregnancy and Frank figuring it out very quickly. The guy's a doctor; he's no dummy.
Right.
He can do the math pretty easily in his head, I would figure there, and so forth. Also, I kind of found it interesting as far as, Walternate and his mistress Weriko and everything, and she seems to have a very intimate, detailed knowledge about his situation with Peter because she was actually giving him some advice that you expect from somebody who knew him very well, not from somebody who was just occasional weekend hookup or something. And that kind of struck me as kind of interesting there. I also noticed she had scars too, oddly enough.
Yeah. But
anyhow, those are some of my main observations, other than the ones that you gentlemen mentioned.
Yeah, well, that's good. And I guess I'll start with Bug Girl. It'll tie in, as you guys remember, that in the alternate timeline, Bug Girl and Charlie get married, and that's kind of the explanation we are given about Kirk Acevedo not being around, or Charlie being around in season 4. It's because him and Bug Girl, Mona, got married. I had something to say about something that Lou said. Maybe I'll remember that. But I had a couple of comments here. There was the comment, and I didn't get the exact quote, but I think it's when they're talking to Bug Girl, maybe not, but at some point they talk about the cockroaches, and they say, or not the cockroaches, but the beetles, and say that they look the same, but they aren't the same. And it was another one of those quotes that's totally talking about, at that moment, it was kind of talking about faux Olivia, where she looks the same. But, Frank kind of picked up something when he first got back, and she was able to kind of deflect it a little bit, much the same way, she was able to deflect some of the things that Peter was observing in her. But so she looks the same, but she's not. She was affected by Peter Bishop. And, she doesn't know she's pregnant at that point. We do. Well, as we're rewatching it, we do anyway. And so that quote had a little bit more meaning, I thought, than I thought that it did the first time through. And this episode established Lincoln's feelings for Olivia, or faux Olivia. We knew that he had kissed her once. We got that in an earlier episode, but he says, "Oh, that's before I knew she had a boyfriend." So it was just kind of a funny throwaway line. But in this episode, you really get a sense that he really does have some sincere feelings for her, and we're going to finally get to see the payoff for that in season 4 when Blue versus Lincoln goes to be with Red versus Lincoln's, or Red versus Olivia.
That would be weird.
That would be weird, especially since Red versus Lincoln is dead at that point. But Spoiler alert. No. But anyway, so they kind of established that. And man, my response to Lou, I don't remember what it was. Rats. Oh well.
Well, I've got one for you. What about that line that Frank delivers? And he goes, "You were going to marry me."
That was a good line. It's a good parting line, isn't it? Yeah.
Wow, that was awesome.
Yeah.
You're going to marry me and try to keep this a secret the whole time? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Anything else, guys?
All I know is on our podcast, the people there were very sad to see Frank go. They liked him quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the ladies, I think, liked Frank better than they did Peter.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Look out, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, the glyphs in this one spelled Romad, and the clue, the second victim, the guy that crashed his car at like a parking garage or something that looked like that, his license plate said APT 6B, which is apartment 6B. And the next episode is called 6B in reference to that quantumly entangled apartment. And the synopsis is: the sudden death of a half-dozen partygoers brings the team to a building in Brooklyn and the home of a woman grieving her late husband. Peter and Olivia bridge the emotional gap they share. Walter grows burdened by the physical damages that are manifesting in this universe. This was written by Robert Chiappetta and Glenn Whitman and directed by Tom Yatsko. And we are back at the top with Lou.
Alrighty. Well, this is an episode. I think when it first came out, people thought it was a pretty light episode, but I tell you, I'm rewatching it. This is probably the episode that rose the most in my rewatch. Mm-hmm. And in a nutshell, this is basically the story arc for season 4.
Boy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole season right here, and I love this episode. I just think that Anna Torv and Josh Jackson just nailed their roles in this episode. I did like that the woman leaving the hotel, the Rosencrantz Hotel, was going to the Schrodinger Hotel. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, Walter's matchmaking scene was just fantastic. Breakfast, the most important meal of the day, and I proved it in 72 or wherever it was.
New England Journal of Medicine, 1973 article he published.
Yeah. And then, of course, the conversation between Peter and Olivia, and Olivia's, carrying over from the previous episode before Immortality, saying that I know that you still think about her. And of course, Peter just says, well, of course I think about her, because when I was with her, these were all the things that I thought I was waiting for to happen between the two of us. And, his line that it was beautiful was just fantastic. And Olivia saying, well, she took it all away from us. And then, his line, who's the one stopping us now? I just thought that was beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
And Olivia just it was kind of like a slap for her, I think. It kind of like, he's got something there. She's so wrapped up in herself again at this point that it's just really powerful stuff. And Walter, when they get back to the hotel, and Peter calls him "Hey Cupid," and all that stuff that was great stuff. And after that conversation at the house, then when Peter's joking about the other half of the tenants going, you can see Olivia's really starting to realize that she's really into him. Just her facial expressions towards Peter and her body language, she's struggling with her feelings, and it's really quite apparent. So I really love how Anna Torv played this episode. And Walter was great with his "Is it second guess everything I do" day, and
Yes.
that was awesome.
Yeah.
Olivia loves Barry White. That was great. And I just love how Fringe takes old stuff and brings it back and repurpose it for something else. We saw it with the Amber, and and as you mentioned, Daryl, that was something that they hadn't thought of at the time, but they saw an opportunity and they took it. And here we get the glimmer coming back when Olivia kisses Peter, and it's because she's afraid that she's not good enough, or she's incapable of sharing this kind of relationship that Peter wants. So I just love how they do that. And then, of course, the whole relationship between the woman in apartment B and Derek is all about quantum entanglement. And that's like I said, that's basically season 4.
Yeah.
That's why Peter was, kept around, and we get Peter's reiteration that has to be another solution, which I really like, and Walter begins to appreciate and understand Walternate's position, because he's basically doing the same steps that Walternate probably had to go through when he started to amber on the other side. I love the spooky action at a distance reference. And it was nice foreshadowing that Alice said, if the impossible is possible, maybe I will see him again. And that obviously is going to play into something that happens in an episode or two down the road from here.
Yep.
And of course, the last scene, nicely understated. And again, Josh and Anna just really made that a really touching scene. And Anna's I want what you want. This episode went up considerably in my rewatch. I think this is just a fantastic episode, which I think a lot of people called a fluff episode when it first aired.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lou. I mean, this one I don't remember really having a whole lot of affection for, but it totally laid out what they were going to be doing in season 4. You mentioned the spooky at a distance quote. That goes right into the next one where Peter says, two objects interacting with one another even though they're separated by a great distance. And they go on to say that the distance won't matter, and that will come heavily into play with season 4. I mean, that is the crux of how season 4 begins, and it was right there for us, and we didn't even realize it at the time. And so I say, well played, Pinkner Wyman. Well played.
Very much. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Hank, what do you have?
Okay, well, that's a tough one to follow there, because you covered a lot of stuff that I had made some notes about here.
Sorry, but I did find another episode.
Well, I loved the episode the first time around, and watching it again kind of just reminded me of a number of different things. I mean, the parallels between the old couple being tied together quantum-wise, even though it was not the same man, there was enough commonalities that were tying them together and nearly tore two universes apart over them, except the one crucial difference. In one universe, they'd had children, and the other, they never had any children. Right. Okay, and that was a crucial difference, and that was what kind of made the whole thing kind of stabilize and come apart. Or I should say, temporarily prevent two universes from coming apart, maybe more appropriately.
Sure.
I also did notice the balcony incident at the beginning. This is like a lost reference. You remember Hurley was on a balcony and collapsed?
Yes.
Except in this case, is that the balcony disappeared. Everybody went plow down there and so forth. I was like, another balcony incident. Way to go, JJ Abrams. Way to go. I was almost looking for Hugo Reyes around there somewhere.
He'll make an appearance soon.
Oh, I know. That's one of my favorite appearances of Hugo Reyes post-loss was him and Walter hitting the bong. But anyway, I digress. Also, Walter in the "perhaps I should make a frittata" line. That's just, again, Walter being Walter again. Got to enjoy that there. I also remember at one point there's a reference to the soul magnets again. Okay, a little foreshadowing there. What happens later on with the soul magnets? He's wishing for Bell's call from beyond. Be careful what you wish for, Walter Bishop. We end up getting some great acting from Anna Torv when that happens later on. So I got caught a few of those things here and there. Overall, one of those episodes, I was looking though, and they were going back and forth between the universes. I did not see if the other universe had it called the Guildenstern Building as opposed to the Rogenkrantz Building. For some reason, I was looking for that because of the old reference to Shakespeare and Schrodinger's cat. Nice touch there,
Yeah.
Those are my main observations.
Okay, very good. John?
Well, I think that the title of this episode just screams 6 bodies. It was 6 bodies that fell through the balcony.
Oh,
so that was it was just kind of like so nice obvious.
Catch. Yeah, nice catch. It wasn't obvious to me.
Me either.
Well, I heard when they said it over and over again at the beginning of the episode, I was like, oh, come on, quit banging us in the head with it. Okay. Then there's Walter's comment of like, there is no such thing as ghosts except for soul magnets, and he carries on with that.
Yeah.
And then they kind of did this, they revolved around this flipping of the coin. Walter's flipping the coin, and he says 10 out of 10. Something's affecting the natural physical laws. I thought that was a neat test. But also, the lady and the guy pretty much flipped their fate at the fuse box, on the flip of a coin.
Right.
And then at the very end of the episode, there was also the asterisk is never wrong. What happened to the level 4, and then they just sort of shrug it off and walk off. Those are all key elements that I thought presaged what's going to happen on further down the road.
Yeah. That's a good point about the asteroid. That we probably should have mentioned in our discussion on Immortality. You know, the Frank's obsession, or maybe not obsession is the best word, but his affinity maybe for Astrid. You know, he's like, where can I get me one of those? You know,
oh yeah, that was great.
And Astrid, you know, seemed to really like that. But yeah, I love too that the mention of soul magnets in this episode. I was like, yes,
sing that there,
they're coming. I'm going to get to sing it, and soul magnets are coming. And I don't remember really. I mean, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but you know that he said that about soul magnets, and I don't really remember ever paying it any attention at the time. But
I remember his thing about the ghost. You know, there is no such thing as ghosts. And they go like, are you sure after everything you've seen?
Yeah, and Peter's like, oh, that's where you draw the line,
it's
you know?
par for the course for them, even on an off week.
Yeah.
I did also like the fact that they revisited that gel that clogged up that bus and everything, because I remember I was live tweeting the show, this episode when it first came on with several Fringies, and we were saying, well, how are they going to do about this? They don't have any amber on this side. And I said, remember the bus? And then sure enough, boom, you know, the gel that formed in the bus, they can use that for amber. So, yep. Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
So I guess this is where they actually presage where they're going to use it's a plant, but the soul magnets, you know.
Right.
If they hadn't thought of it by the time they got to it, they probably already did.
Yeah, they definitely had gotten to it.
They gave Nina the bell, and you go back to season 1 finale.
You know, I read that Leonard Nimoy actually asked for that bell.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah. And they had the tea back in the season 1 finale. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right. Anything else on 6B?
Great episode.
Yeah. We did have I guess I'll point out, we had the green, red when they armed the amber device. They didn't have to use it, but when it was armed, it went green, red.
Very nice.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The glyphs. Let me get back over here to those notes. The glyphs spelled hearts, and the clue for the next episode when they arrive at the scene of the splats, there was the Tulip food store. It's either that or when the couple are walking by at the beginning, or maybe both, but because it's the same sidewalk, I think. But either way, right there, Tulip food store, which gets us into subject 13. And it is, the synopsis reads, a complete accounting of the pivotal points for both Bishop families shortly after Peter's disappearance and the traumatic childhood events that led to Olivia's awareness of the abilities she possesses. This was written by Akiva Goldsman, J.H. Wyman, Jeff Pinkner, and directed by Fred Toye. One thing I'll point out about this episode is that this completely 100% takes place back in 1985, which is the first time that an entire episode had taken place outside of the current timeline, because like in the episode Peter, it was done through flashback and stuff like that. And Anna Torv does not appear in this episode. All right, I think Hank, it's your turn to go first. Yep.
Well, the episodes where we go back to 1985 are always special for me. I mean, Peter, for example, you know, I was on the podcast for that episode. That was one that always got to me. And again, we see the rest of the account there as far as what happened in the Red verse, Walternate drinking and going and working on his secret projects over there in Jacksonville, and then Elizabeth drinking in our universe, trying to cope with the fact that, you know, Peter was having all these issues, and the Red Lantern versus the Green Lantern, and irony of ironies, there is a Red Lantern now in DC, but it's not the same way as it was over in the alternate universe DC, as an example there. No peanut M&Ms, for example. I guess too many peanut allergies, or maybe peanuts are extinct, I don't know. The issue about the Brooklyn versus the LA Dodgers, because if you remember the old map of the United States on the other side, Los Angeles is underwater. Looks like there was a major cataclysm that took care of that. All those inconsistencies, and Peter arguing, you're not really my mom, trying to sink himself under Lake Raiden, trying to go back and so forth. Walter being gone and working with Olivia and so forth, but also seeing all the stuff they were putting Olivia through and the other kids through to try to activate the abilities. Olivia's stepfather and some of the craziness that he was putting her through, his basically enjoying the money and everything. It's one of those episodes there where you get this full account of this. It explains really a lot. I also very much like the fact that we were able to see some of the effects of traversing the universe, such as like all of a sudden it gets cold and it snows, for example, the temperature change. Kind of like the red-blue shift when you approach the speed of light, the back end turns red because it stretches out and the front end turns blue. And we have the red-blue universes like that. And so we see kind of some of those tie-ins there. It's very interesting because it's entirely possible that under certain conditions, Olivia could have actually brought Peter back to his universe without being really aware that she did, but she ended up going by herself and inadvertently giving Walternate the clue as far as what exactly happened to Peter. And it's like a whole bunch of missing pieces of the puzzle kind of fit together. How did he know that Peter was over here? Why were they attacking us?
Right.
There we go. Now we understand how it was all found out. And it's one of those episodes that produces a ton of aha moments there. One of the things that I also remember in that episode where we really see the fact that airplanes, although they exist, aren't used commonly, was when Peter was playing with the airplane that he chose at the toy store. He was saying, pulling up to the building, grabbing him to do it. He was doing those sequence that a Zeppelin or a blimp would use to basically attach up there as opposed to an actual landing on a runway. I found that was very, very obvious there, and you had to listen to it and catch that. I also noticed how when Peter found out that trying to go back might hurt Olivia, at least on some level, he kind of seemed to accept his fate and start trying to blend in, if you will, at least for the time being. But we also know that Elizabeth reached the point where she couldn't take it anymore and took her own life because of the guilt.
Yeah, that was hard. That was a hard way to see the episode end.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Did we know at the time? I guess we did. We knew at the time that she ended up committing suicide. We didn't know exactly how, but that was. We saw it. We saw the beginning of the end for her right there.
Yep.
All right. Anything else, Hank?
Those are my main observations there.
All right, John.
Well, let's see. The first thing I noticed was the Atari 2600 theme song. That was classic. That was great. I'd really like to talk to Chris Tilton and see what instrument he used to produce that, or if it was somebody else.
Yeah, I like the old style theme song.
That was great.
Yeah.
The drum machine at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Miami Vice intro.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, just as y'all were saying earlier. Yeah. Did you?
No, Daryl. I'm just surprised.
I've got a picture somewhere. I don't know if it still exists or not. Hopefully not. But I remember my mom taking us to Walmart when we were kids and getting our pictures taken. And I had, the blazer with the shirt, and my brother had same thing, just a different color.
God.
The Don Johnson look. Yeah, I was probably I had to be 7 or 8 at the time based on events.
Were you aware of what it was about?
Yeah. Yeah, sad to say, yeah.
Do you have the scruff? No, I guess you were too young for the beard.
I can't grow a beard now. I'm serious. Yeah. Anyway, John.
Yeah. Well, just riffing on the same thing y'all said before, we found out that Walter was trying to get Peter home. It kind of justified all this cortexiphan trials. It gave us a reason not to hate him for what he did, and then later on in the episode, it kind of built into a paranoia. He was afraid of retribution from the other side. And then the ultimate irony was by the end of the episode, we find out he'd gotten off scot-free. The other side had no clue where Peter had gone.
Yeah.
And then Olivia finally confessed to Walternate. But she didn't even mention Peter once in her confession or her explanation of what was going on. What really did it, that sketchbook that he had in his hand, he finally knew. Yeah. And again, the whole theme again was be careful what you wish for. Now that Walter and his wife, I can't ever remember her name, finally had Peter back, they had to live daily with the idea that they might lose him again, that he was going away. They finally, I don't know, I guess they died from the guilt of their Peter was actually really gone. This Peter wasn't their Peter. He was just an interloper.
Yeah.
A changeling. That's all I got.
Okay. All right, Lou.
Okay, this is like, wow, what a perfect bookend episode to Peter. Like you could watch Peter and then go right into this episode, and it really
I always watch them in pairs.
Yeah, some episodes just go together, and these ones really do. I love the and I'll say, and I hope Clint's not going to get mad at me, but I love the kid actors in this episode. They were both fantastic.
I agree. Yeah,
they were
especially. Yeah, especially the girl. But I thought again on rewatch, I really appreciated the boy actor much more as well. Fringe has so many episodes with so many great openings, and that whole sequence where Orla Brady as Elizabeth, and Orla Brady, what a fantastic actress, and she just killed it in this episode. When she finds out that Peter's trying to go back home, and she makes the connection, and she's running out on the lake and screaming his name, and he's throwing that brick on the ice, and it's kind of like a soft spot, like a soft spot trying to go from one reality to another. So he's breaking the ice.
Symbology.
Yeah, and it's I want to go home, and then you go to the credits. It's just such a powerful opening. When Fringe does their good openings like that, it's you're in for a great episode. So it was interesting with Walter with the kids. Olivia was standing on a red dot on the rug, and Nick was beside her.
Okay,
and that was cool. And everybody wants to go home except Olivia, which was like, that can't be good. So, and watching this on Blu-ray, one thing, because I always thought, like when I was watching it on TV off my DVR on that, it's the image is purposely made softer for this episode, because if you compare it to the other episodes in the series, it's a lot softer, which I guess is meant to reflect the 80s style of photography or film quality or whatever. So I thought that was a nice touch. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, or maybe it's just my eyes.
You might be right. I was wondering if it was a storm or something.
Okay. Yeah. And then and I'm going to take this one from, I'm pretty sure I'm taking this from Daryl, but we get the matching scene with Olivia jumping when her stepfather's chasing her, and she sees the dirigible in the field, which goes back to the first episode of this season, Olivia, when she's the adult Olivia.
You stole my note, Lou.
I know. See, I'm on a roll.
That's all right.
And we really see how intelligent Peter is in this episode. And but even as with his intelligence, there's things as a kid you can't quite get the concepts, but he's telling Elizabeth that he wants to get to the other world at the bottom of the lake, which for him, I'm sure, is all these mixed up memories because he was sick and they went through the ice, and that was really cool. And his line, "I'm not crazy," was just heartbreaking, and I thought the kid really did a great job with that. And we get a nice tie-in with the white tulips from the white tulip episode, and Elizabeth's explanation that a professor missed them. So he used his brain to change the world so that he could have these white tulips. And we've had that so many times with Walter and other scientists throughout the series. So that was another fantastic moment and a nice tie-in to the white tulip concept. Peter seeing Olivia at the school for the first time, and I just love Walter says, "Oh, the beguiling Olivia beguiles." So that was a nice tie-in as well. Peter checks Olivia's box, which happens to be red, and it has the drawing of the tulip filled in it. Yep. We find out that Elizabeth, on the other side, probably gave Walternate the idea for shape-shifting, because he said maybe it was an alien looking like somebody else. So that's got to be where the seeds for the shapeshifters came from. I love the Arthur C. Clarke reference. Any science advanced enough is considered magic by a more primitive society, right. So that was good. And Walter, like Walternate, or Walternate like Walter, says there has to be an explanation as to what happened with Peter. He's my boy. I can't lose him. Very similar themes from both Walters. And of course, the scene in the tulip field, very touching. And Olivia's still cooling down, I guess you could say. And then at the point where, because she's reading that book, Winter's Tale, she makes it snow. And of course, as everybody else has mentioned, the jump to the other world. And on the first time I watched it, I was going, "Whoa, what just happened there?" But that was the major shock for me in that episode, that it was Olivia who allowed Walternate to make the connection. So, and then of course the shot with Peter hugging his mother and finally calling her mom, which is I guess kind of like the coin toss analogy, because that's on the other side, Walternate was drinking until he found out where Peter was, and then he stopped. And on our side, when Peter called Elizabeth, his mom, that's when she started to drink. So that's kind of a nice switch between the two sides. And there was one more point I was going to make. I'll try to get it when we have a chance for second thoughts.
Okay. Well, I loved this episode. I thought the acting was brilliant all the way around. Orla Brady did such a good job. I thought in her first scene where she's running through the woods towards Raiden Lake, trying to get Peter and trying to talk him off the ice, and just a powerful, powerful scene. And even though I knew it was coming, when he threw that stone in and hit the ice and it cracked, I still found myself going, like, is he really going to do it? Even though I knew he was going to do it, it was still such a powerful scene, and I loved it. And then at the very end of the episode, when he hugs her and calls her mom, and she immediately gets out the booze, and just a powerful scene. And I was like you guys. I thought the child acting was great. Clint doesn't know what he's talking about in this case.
Clint ain't here.
That's right.
Yeah, they're talking smack about you, Clint.
You'll just have to show up for that.
And this is the way you can prove if he listens to these or not, because he'll have something to say.
And anyway, I thought it was a really good episode. The only that's actually all the notes I have. I mentioned Orla Brady, or the Elizabeth character. The torment and guilt. She kind of wanted to keep Peter to begin with, and
yeah.
Obviously, we learned this episode just taught us so much. It helped put things in proper perspective. There's the old adage, "There's two sides to every story," is so true, and this episode proved it for us. We had a lot of assumptions about Walter and why he took Peter, and a lot of those assumptions got blown out of the water when we saw the Peter episode. Yep. But then we had made some other assumptions about Walternate and Elizabeth and other things. And those kind of got blown out of the water in this episode, and they really helped give us a fuller understanding, and we could start to see things from the perspective of the Redverse and Walternate, why he made the decisions he did, and why their marriage fell apart, and on the Blue Verse, why Elizabeth killed herself, and why Peter hates or seemed to have more hatred towards Walter than he did Elizabeth, and so it was just a really good perspective episode for us, for sure. And of course, blown away by the ending when Olivia, has no idea. I bet you to this day she has no idea that when she crossed over and told Walternate what she did, the results of that, the consequences of that. And it was innocent on her part, but we
remember how Walter went and confronted her stepfather afterwards.
Yeah.
She may have thought that he got through to her. Or that she got through to him and didn't realize she had talked to the other Walter.
That's right. So, just a wonderful episode.
Daryl, there's something the chat room said.
Okay.
They mentioned Bishop Dynamics,
right?
Which just made me think. Remember, I want to call it timeline. It's not a timeline. In this other universe, Bell had died, so he wasn't a stabilizing influence on Bishop in the Redverse. So he had to go through all of this by himself.
And that's what I was going to say about what Lou said earlier. That jarred my memory. And in that episode, we were talking about when Brandon had wanted to test the cortexiphan on children, and Walternate said no. And what I think we see here is a couple of things. Walternate has lost Peter and has been affected by losing a child. But also he's older now, and we're going to hear here in just a few more episodes next week when we watch the LSD episode. But I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that Bell is going to tell Walter that don't be afraid to cross the line, because now they have that wisdom and maturity to go along with that ambition. And I think that Walternate had that as well. That's why he said, no, we're not going to experiment on kids. So that was the thought that I was going to throw back in there. But no, John, I think you're right.
Oh, the chat room was right.
That's true. You did say that there.
Yay, chat room.
That's it.
All right. Any other thoughts on subject 13?
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say earlier now. Actually, I have two things. One's really quick. I love the bit when they were practicing trying to jump, and Walter picks up the rabbit and puts it on Nick's feet, and then later on he tells Elizabeth that if the kids can jump, then Peter will just go with them on their feet. So I thought that was a nice little tie into that. And I know one of the points of contention for a lot of people about this episode is that why don't Peter and Olivia remember any of this? And the showrunner's position has always been that because things were so traumatic for them during this time period, they've totally blocked out this part of their life. And Olivia says she can't remember anything from that time period as well. So that's the reason they give. And I know dramatically, I think we would love it if Peter and Olivia would at some point remember this moment together. But I guess they're going to stick to their guns on it. I was kind of hoping during season 4, when Olivia was getting her memories back, that she would be sort of getting a collection of all these different timelines and threads, and she would actually, by chance, come across this memory and keep it with her when she did finally get all her memories back. But that didn't play out. But that's one of the big. That's probably the main issue I think a lot of people have. They really want Peter and Olivia to remember this time together, but they don't.
Yeah, I think
they're preteen. They're preteen. Who friends do you remember in your preteens? I mean, really.
I understand from a realistic standpoint, but from a dramatic, these are star-crossed lovers kind of thing, or
shippers.
They're destined to be together. They want them to remember this.
Well, here's a counter argument, though. Like I said, Peter basically realized he was going to have to try to blend in because he wasn't going to be going back home anytime soon, and he may have had to block out a lot of things, like a lot of his old memories and so forth, to fit in. And that, probably the act of kind of forcing himself to do this to fit in, to acquiesce to what was going on, he may have blotted some of that out just on purpose, just to be able to survive in this universe.
Or too much LSD in his teens, huh?
Yeah. No, I think, when you put it like that, I think they've provided proper motivation for Peter, not sure why he doesn't remember, and obviously for Olivia, because of the trials and everything, why they don't remember. But people want them to remember, and I can understand that.
Yeah, I can understand them wanting to as well. One other thing I'll throw out there with Peter would be that we know that Walter did something to help him stop having nightmares, and maybe whatever that was, made him also forget some of these things.
Took part of his brain.
Did a job somewhere, missing dynamic.
That's right. All right. Anything else on subject 13? All right.
So
let's move on to subject 14.
Maybe not subject 14.
You're my hero.
All right. We have the glyphs spell switch, and the clue in this episode was the periodic table of elements that we saw in the daycare center in Jacksonville, which gets us to the very next episode, OS, which is the periodic element osmium. And the synopsis is: the team investigates a group of thieves who appear to be able to defy gravity. Walter attempts to prevent any more physical damage in the rift between universes. This was written by Josh Singer and Graham Rowland and directed by Brad Anderson. All right. John, I think you're up.
Yeah. I don't remember too much from this episode except the final scene between Nina and Walter. Most of it's a blur, except that I think it's appropriately named Oz, as in Dorothy. We're not in Kansas anymore. They kind of left for flights of fancy unknown. At this point, they broke all the rules, all of physics. I think they gave Clint a heart attack.
Yeah, because he's not good with physics.
Yeah, it was well played. I forget, Alan Ruck was his name, I think. Played the mad scientist. Yeah. Which I think was a general theme through all of these episodes we're reviewing tonight. But that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah, and he was the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, of course. What was his character name in Ferris Bueller? Does anybody remember?
Oh, man.
Yeah. He was Ferris Bueller's friend.
It's the line where you drown. It says, Ferris Bueller, you're my hero.
Yeah, Cameron, that's it, yeah.
Oh, what a name.
Yeah. All right, Lou, what about you?
I agree with that. The science in this episode was pretty wonky, but then again, according to Walter, physics are breaking down, the laws of physics, so why not put the two heaviest elements together and make people float? Yeah. I love the opening shot with, I call him Hurley. I call him but that bonging scene was just
so
awesome.
Good. Yeah.
It was awesome.
And of course the Yoko reference.
Yes.
It was the 70s. What can you say?
Yeah, what could he do? It was the 70s.
It was really funny. I kind of wish that they would have had Hurley on more often than the episode, but yeah, it it was, and even the opening shot. I mean, this opening episode is not as strong as the previous ones we saw, but I love the camera flip at the very end when the cop drives up. That's because you don't know what's going on there. So that was really well done. And for those of you who have the Blu-ray, this is one of the episodes where they actually have like a it's not a director's cut, but it's kind of like a behind the scenes version of it. So they'll step out of the episode and show you things of what they're doing. And how they set up some of the special effects shots and that, and it's quite interesting to watch. So it's definitely worth, if you got the Blu-ray, to check out that version of it. So I thought it was really good. What else have we got here? Oh, Walter's got some everyone poops references here. Trying to work on the perfect bowel movement, and for almost the whole episode, we get to see what Olivia looks like when she's happy.
Yeah,
yeah.
One of the few times. So she was just bouncing around, and every time her and Peter took off somewhere, it was just funny to watch Walter and Astrid's reactions to them. Like, it was just so obvious that they were just chuckling at how energized the two of them, especially Olivia. She was way much more, I think, digging it than Peter was into it, but he was a little more controlled. But like the scene where Nina catches them holding hands in the hallway, that was great. And of course Nina is over the moon because she's had this conversation with Sam Weiss about Peter probably might pick the other Olivia, but apparently he's gone for the one that she wanted him to go for, so that was good. Until yes. The whole thing with the kids with muscular dystrophy and the Icarus tie-ins and that, I thought that was that was really well done. And this time we get bleeding from the eyes instead of from the nose, so that was slightly inventive, I guess. But
different orifice,
yeah. And then I know a lot of people didn't like the Reciprocity episode because of the way Peter was acting in it. But at least they came back to it in this episode, and they used it for a nice relationship moment between Peter and Olivia. For Peter, totally, say, I don't trust Walter; he's too close. I don't trust the FBI, but I do trust you. And you can see how that affected Olivia and how touched she was by that statement. And then he brings her in and shows her the discs from that episode. So that was really well done. And the whole setup scenes between. At the end there, it was obviously, the parallels between Alan Ruck's character and his son and Walter and Peter, and the things that they would do to, in their mind, save or make their sons' lives better. And the fact that this Alan Ruck character was killing other kids to make something to make his son's life better. And his son says, well, I thought you liked me the way I was, and I just was happy to have a father that loved me. So, again, Fringe does weird out-of-the-box stuff, but they really have a good handle on relationships. And I think that because we're all kind of, trying to wrap our head around all the weird concepts they're throwing at us, that this kind of moments get lost in the shuffle until you rewatch the episode and see that. So, it's probably the weakest episode out of the bunch that we just went through, but I didn't mind it, and some of the special effects shots were pretty cool.
Yeah, they're clever.
And we get Olivia starting to talk as Belle, which is some people didn't like it, and other people did. I happen to like the way she did. I thought she did a pretty good job, and we'll see that in the next bunch of episodes. And that's about all I got.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the relationships. When we, if you guys watched our Comic-Con Fringe Press Room videos or listened to that podcast, that was one of the questions that a gentleman who was at our table asked everybody that came through, and was, what do you think Fringe's legacy will be, or what will their impact on television be? And a lot of them answered it and said, it's the relationship. So that's what makes Fringe different from any other sci-fi show, is that a lot of sci-fi shows forget the relationships, or the relationships are an afterthought, but that's not the way it is with Fringe. And hopefully Fringe's legacy will be that it was a sci-fi show that did some wonderful things with character development and relationships. And so, Lou, I think that's awesome that you picked up on that.
I totally agree with that. Like shows that become classics, like the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
I think if anybody's watched Farscape, the relationships are very important in that series. Lord of the Rings, again, there's big wars going on, but it's really about these little hobbits and the friendship that gets them through everything. So, these big concept ideas are cool, but at the end of the day, it's the relationships and the characters that make stories classics. And I think the cast and the showrunners obviously are dialed into that.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too.
Clearly.
All right, Hank, what do you think?
Well, man, again, you fellas covered a lot of it here. That's what's great about having these kind of conversations. It doesn't leave me much to say. Any of y'all remember the Mentos part with Walter?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Mentos geyser. I love that part. Walter, I don't know. This is one of those episodes where I keep on thinking it would be so funny if in some other timeline or universe, whatever you want to call it, Walter Bishop was the host of a kid's show like Mr. Wizard, but it was called Fringe Science with Uncle Walter, and I could just...
Oh my God, we're all in trouble.
That would be fantastic.
Of course, I can see the censors having a fit over some of the nuts, the stuff that he pulls, but that Mentos
Censors, what about
geyser.
parents? Parents would be going nuts.
Well, the kids would be loving it, though. You got to admit that.
If I could just interject, John, there's a great on the behind the scenes thing about how they set that gag up, and it's
really?
way more than just one peppermint or Mentos to make it go like that. They drop in a whole roll before he puts in the last one. So.
Oh wow.
Oh man, Blu-ray, here I come.
Yeah, it takes almost a whole roll. They could do that. That's true.
Yeah.
Also, at the very end, of course, when after ringing the bell, Nina is still Nina, and Walter seems so disappointed. And then, of course, Peter takes Olivia to his office, and you think there's going to be something going on. Then all of a sudden, Peter, it's very good to see you again. It's like, oh, crud.
We got to have a name for that. Is that going to be Faux Leonard or?
We had it. It was Bellivia is what we called that.
Olivia, okay.
Yeah.
I like the little bell sound before she actually turned.
Yeah.
She was looking at her reflection in the glass too.
Yeah.
So that was a nice touch.
Pavlov's dog.
Knocking at the bell that summoneth thee to heaven or to hell, but or summoneth William Bell.
For whom the bell tolls.
Wow.
Oh boy, this is going downhill fast.
Let's save the episode, really.
All right. Anything else, Hank?
I'm good.
All right. Yeah, that's about all I have. I have, soul magnets. I won't do it the whole way. I did it once already, but
The soul saviors.
we're going to get to say that a few more times before this is all said and done. And I think what struck me in this episode was that you guys talked about how happy Olivia was and their relationship over the last 3 episodes, really, since he said to her basically, who's stopping us now? And the facial expression that she had in that moment where she realized, oh, it's me, it's my fault. And that was the turning point in their relationship. And it's over the last couple of episodes, it's gotten a lot better. Mm-hmm. They've become a lot closer. And it, obviously it peaks in this episode where they're like a couple of little high school kids just with their affection and their PDA and just the way they're looking at each other and Olivia's body language and stuff like that, and she kind of is like Skippy a little bit when she's around him, and all that comes to a screeching halt right here with Belle, embodying Olivia, and it just is another reminder that these two just never can seem to get together. And is it going to be their destiny to never wind up together, or will season 5 end with them finally getting together? How is it going to end? Is it going to end with the tragedy, or is it going to end with the happily ever after? What's it going to be?
I think it's going to be both.
Like a Romeo and Juliet.
First night after Belle possesses Olivia. I mean, awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not think about that.
I just wanted to add to what you said, Daryl, about like Peter and Olivia finally getting together. I mean, Apartment 6B, we saw that at the last scene that was happening, but then the show just knows how to pace it. They put in a Red Universe episode, and then we got the flashback episode. So it's been like 2 episodes, and people are just dying to find out what's happening with Peter and Olivia.
Yeah.
And they finally give it to us 3 episodes later. So
right.
Really well played. And then, of course, they take it away.
Right.
Yes, of course.
That's right. Not so fast.
That's right.
Yep. All right. Any other thoughts on OS or Oz?
I'm good.
Nope. All right. Well, I have a couple of announcements to make. I mentioned last week that we have changed our Twitter name. I'm going to keep mentioning this for a few more weeks and make sure everybody is aware of it. You don't have to resubscribe to us or refollow us or anything like that. Just recognize now that instead of our tweets coming from Fringe Observers, they're coming from GSM Podcast. And we got a tweet yesterday that said, you know, the Fringe Observers was really clever and nice, and GSM Podcast just doesn't do it. And I agree, you know, but it does more accurately reflect all that we do at Golden Spiral Media. We're not just the Fringe Podcast, and we've had 5 podcasts since January of this year, and so our Twitter name has needed to be changed, and we just finally decided to do it. And really, the main reason why I decided to do it last week and before we got into this new season was because we're actually starting a new podcast in a few weeks, and that is for the new NBC show Revolution. And this is the announcement that I teased at the beginning of this episode. So that's, here it is, the Revolution Podcast. I know, we're really creative with our podcast names here at Golden Spiral Media.
You have to play some Prince music as your theme song.
I don't know. I don't know what the theme song is going to be. We've got one of our listeners, Kingston, who's done the music for the Fringe Podcast, the intro and the outro. He's working on some music for us, and I'm excited. I haven't heard it yet. Hopefully I'll get it on Monday, and looking forward to hearing that. And but if you go over to therevolutionpodcast.com, that'll redirect you over to goldenspiralmedia.com. Okay. And so we're going to have everything over at goldenspiralmedia.com and not have yet another Twitter ID and another website to manage, and just try to keep everything over there at goldenspiralmedia.com for Revolution. We're excited about it. We saw the pilot at Comic-Con, and both of us liked it. But here's the thing. Here's the twist that I promised. This podcast will be the first Golden Spiral Media production that does not have me paired with Clint. Clint will not be participating in the Revolution podcast. And the only reason for that, without going into a whole lot of detail that frankly would probably bore you, is
get on somebody better.
No, I couldn't say that. I love podcasting with Clint, and I have a blast doing it. But his schedule and his personal life, his wife is expecting their 3rd child here in just a few more weeks, and
he just can't.
He just can't. Yeah, he just can't. And so we've got a new co-host that will be coming in, and his name is Jeremy, and he and I will be recording our first podcast together within the next week. I don't know if we'll do it in front of the live audience for his first time or not. We may just do it here privately in studio and then release it. But when we do the Revolution podcast each week, we will have the live chat, which will be Mondays at 9 Central at over at goldenspiralmedia.com. So we'll watch it together and have the live chat just like we do with Fringe. And then we'll record it, the podcast each week in front of our live internet audience, just like we're doing right now. We haven't decided on a day and time on that, so stay tuned on that. And follow us over on Twitter at GSM Podcasts with an S, or over on Facebook at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media to stay tuned on all of the latest news regarding the Revolution podcast. But we're very excited to be doing this podcast. We think the show is very good. It's from the creative minds of Eric Kripke, JJ Abrams, and Jon Favreau. You know, that should be enough to get anybody excited right there. You've got Billy Burke that's on board with it. Elizabeth Mitchell is going to be on board. Giancarlo Espisito is also in it. I mean, it's just got some great names, and then some actors that you might not have heard of before, but we're really excited to be doing it. And so that's the Revolution podcast, and that'll be myself and Jeremy Hunt that will be the hosts of that podcast.
Cool.
All right, I gave our contact information in there. I didn't give our phone number, so if you want to send us some feedback, you can call us at 304-837-2278. And our feedback email is feedback@thefringepodcast.com or feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. You can send us email or attach audio feedback to either one of those email addresses. All right, well, guys, John, great having you this week. I'm glad you were able to join us.
Thank you.
It's great.
Hopefully you have a silly sign-off ready. And so we're going to go Lou, and then Hank, and then John. And so until next time, stay Fringe-tastic.
I hope Daryl spells my name right.
Fringe it, man.
Have an alternative day.
Nice.
Oh.
The Fringe Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or Fox. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes as provided within United States Code, Title 17, aka Fair Use. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.